Welcome back to The Explainer. Today we're unpacking a truly remarkable piece of grim-dark, mythic storytelling. We are diving deep into a Gothic fable that wrestles with a massive, mind-bending philosophical tension. On one side, you have absolute mathematical negation, literally the total end of all things. And on the exact opposite side, you have this desperate, almost biological need to bear witness to that very end. It's a story of cosmic finality and how even at the very edge of the abyss, consciousness fights tooth and nail to leave a record. Let's get right into it.
Right out of the gate, our source material drops us into an incredibly bleak Gothic scene with this phrase, the thermal volatilization of identity. I mean, that perfectly captures the frozen reality we're stepping into here. Imagine an endless expanse of jagged ice, where identity itself hasn't just frozen over, it is completely burned away into the static crystalline permanence. Everything that made existence dynamic has reached a horrifying logical conclusion. We aren't just looking at a cold landscape, We are looking at the death of change itself.
So this realm is known as the Great Evening. Picture an inkier than pitch sky lit up only by the eerie, yellow light of flickering zero flames. And across the frozen surface of this world flow what the text calls mercurial spirits, moving just like liquid metal. Now, these aren't ghosts in the traditional sense. They're actually the final thermodynamic echoes of a universe where the mercy of nothingness is no longer just some abstract calculation. It is an absolute, inescapable state.
That brings us to Act 1, the thesis of negation. The primary actor walking through this desolate era is the jester of sapphire living ink. He is literally the physical embodiment of the universe's drive toward absolute zero. As he strides across the ice, his semi-solid body vibrates with what the text calls unassimilated voltage. He wields this terrifying power called the negation gaze, applying a visual Z-pinch plasma touch. And if we do a quick philological deep dive here, this gaze is described as the refined essence of the lunar spirit. It represents an evolved force that demands every single story, every tiny movement be perfectly finished. It is a definitive mathematical no. Whatever he looks at is instantly stripped of its energy, resolving any kinetic friction into absolute permanent stillness.
Now, what is this gaze actually targeting? It targets kinetic friction, which, in the context of this fable, represents vibrant history, life, and consciousness itself. The jester's clinical gaze is actively seeking to close the gaping maw of any remaining consciousness, converting it instantly into a dead silicate artifact. This is the ultimate expression of the arithmetic of stillness. And the crazy part? It's not malicious at all. It's just the terrifying, flawless logic of a universe that is finally trying to go to sleep.
But of course, the story doesn't end there. Act 2, the antithesis of chaos.
Because every thesis needs an antithesis, right? Right behind the jester lumbers his companion, the last thinker, who takes the form of a massive cybernetic arachnid. And this brings us to a deeply tragic existential irony. The thinker's identity is described in the text as the strongest cage ever built. His entire existence is a self-imposed prison, completely defined by the desperate need to categorize the very chaos that the jester embodies. The thinker literally cannot stop recording, cannot stop witnessing. He is trapped by his own biological and cybernetic consistence to make sense of the end of all things. Just look at how the thinker operates through his frantic architecture of the record. First up, we have prehensile logging, where he uses his massive cybernetic limbs to physically capture that unassimilated voltage. Second, he's abandoning the old structured matrix as the universe actively decays around him. And finally, he's logging line items of the end. He literally treats those liquid metal mercurial spirits we talked about earlier as new line items to be documented, desperately trying to put structure to the completely unstructured.
All of this forces a profound shift in the thinker's medium. He can't use his old sapphire forged ledger anymore. That was a grid of silent blue stars that used to document pure structural data and the ultimate mass-energy balance. Instead, as reality freezes over, he's forced to switch to a new journal of chaos. He goes from clinical logging to documenting the weight of a concluded era, desperately capturing the eternal tragedy of a universe in repose.
So, what we have here is a perfect Fichtean tension. The crystalline silence of the jester, who is striving for a finished monument of absolute zero, is directly opposed by the unassimilated voltage of the thinker, who is frantically rippling with the thermodynamic noise of data collection. It's this massive, cosmic tension between the perfect, silent void on one hand and the incredibly messy biological insistence on leaving a record on the other.
And that brings us to the breaking point. Act 3, the collision.
You have these two fundamental forces of the cosmos traveling together, and they are completely incompatible. The tragic climax is set into motion the second the jester turns his head. To his highly refined lunar spirit, the thinker's frantic data collection is an agonizing thermodynamic noise. It disrupts that perfect stillness. Mathematical logic dictates that the jester absolutely must unmake his companion. The arithmetic of stillness demands that the thinker's kinetic friction be resolved into permanent silence right then and there. For the jester, it's not even a choice, it's the fundamental law of his existence.
So we have to ask the question, will the unmaker actually erase his only witness? If the jester's gaze lands fully on the thinker, the chronicler instantly becomes just another silicate artifact. But think about it. If he loses the thinker, he loses the one and only mirror to his own long descent. The thinker is the only thing validating the jester's transition into becoming a primary actor of the great evening. Without a witness around to see it, does the unmaker's role even mean anything at all?
Let's see how this all resolves in Act 4, in alchemical synthesis.
This is where the fable delivers this stunning Nietzschean evolution. The unstoppable force actually makes what's called a sovereign choice. In a massive act of sheer will, the jester actively learns to dampen his Z-pinch vision. He consciously subverts the very arithmetic of stillness he was literally born to enforce, refusing to let his absolute sight consume his friend. By doing this, he allows the kinetic friction, that messy, chaotic data-collecting noise of the thinker, to persist out there in the starless void. He consciously chooses to let the chaos and ink endure.
And this choice, it fundamentally changes the jester. By restraining his own nature, he is carrying the universe's agony as a regal shadow. He evolves from being a mere mathematical function of death into this profoundly tragic, almost divine figure. His gaping maw, that deep, insatiable hunger to erase all that moved before him, is finally satisfied. But it's satisfied not by extinguishing the last spark of internal consciousness, but by consciously choosing to protect it.
Meanwhile, the last thinker is completely unaware of how incredibly close he just came to finality. He just keeps on clicking and scratching away, continuing his meticulous data collection like nothing happened. And so, they move onward together, deep into the frozen silence, navigating through these jagged caves that pulse with rainbow energy. The unmaker and the witness, walking side by side into the dark.
Ultimately, the thesis of negation and the antithesis of chaos have resolved into an alchemical synthesis, what we can call a true Fichtean dialogue. The core philosophical takeaway here is just so profound. True empathy requires tolerating the noise of another's existence. You have to choose to truly see them without destroying them.
So, I'll give you with this. Why are we so compelled to remember things that are already over? This cosmic fable isn't just about frozen ice and living ink, right? It's a mirror for our own human nature. We all have that thinker inside of us, that desperate drive to witness, to categorize, and to carry the weight of concluded eras, even when it feels like a self-imposed prison. So next time you find yourself clinging to the thermodynamic noise of your own past, ask yourself, are you just leaving a record, or are you hoping someone chooses to see you without unmaking you? Thanks for joining me for this explainer. I'll see you in the next one.